views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to writers and journalists and editors and filmmakers and videographers. And this evening, we're going to do a lot of politics, a lot of Bronx politics. Specifically, in our second segment, we're going to interview an author who wrote a book about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which is very interesting and has some revelations for us. But in our first segment, we're thrilled to welcome our good friend David Cruz from Gothamist. Of course, people remember David in the Bronx from the Norwood News. Always nice to talk to David Cruz. How are you?
Good, Gary. How you doing?
We're getting along and trying to, sort out what the heck is going on with our two special elections. Let's just take a step back. This was the first time the Bronx had ever had a ranked choice voting election. We know there was one in Queens. It took several weeks to get that resolved. What's your impression of the system? Let's start there and how it has worked or maybe not worked.
I think that it's still. I think there still needs to be some time for the voters to sort of understand how the process works. Obviously, you have the ability to rank the folks that you would want to see be your legislator, but you don't have to vote for all five. You can essentially maybe vote for two, or you can even vote for one. And so there's still kind of like a bit of a grace period, learning curve for people to really understand how the process works. I mean, obviously now that we have ranked choice voting, you don't instantaneously get a result if the candidates do not get 50% or more of the vote. And so the days of sort of like these election night parties are kind of sort of like out the door now as a result of ranked choice voting. And so it does give the ability for voters to think that they do have a choice. It's not like they just have to vote for one person. They could very well have, they could vote for five people who they think matches the, sort of like the interests or what they need in a legislator. And of course, like with the 15th and the 11th, right now they're ranked choice voting. The counting process is taking place. The election took place on March 23rd. And of course, we know who the preliminary winners are. Although from what we're hearing, it appears for the 11th council district race, it looks like that's going towards Eric Dinowitz, who was considered sort of the front runner of the race, although you do have Laura, who's sort of coming at a distant second and has already sort of announced that she will be once again vying for the seat in the June primary.
The primary, yeah. And then in the 11th, it was Oswald Felice. I guess
15th, the 15th was the
15th, yes. I'm sorry, yeah. The time lag is, for me, quite disturbing, is that voters vote and then they would like to get a result and know within a reasonable period of time. I mean, this election was March 23rd. We're taping this on Monday, April 12th. I mean, 3 weeks later, and now we're still not there. Is this a case that this can be figured out and they can move it quicker eventually? Or at this point, is this what we're stuck with and this is the system?
No, I think this is sort of temporary for right now, simply because the City Board of Elections does have software that it's sort of will be beta testing and have ready for the June primary soon, as my colleague Bridget Bergen has been reporting. Right now, what's happening is that they're hand counting the votes. And so that is what's sort of causing a bit of a slowdown. Now, the City Board of Elections will have a sort of like a machines that will be able to sort of process these votes in a timelier way, in a faster way. And of course, we need that in order to know who for the outcome of essentially all the council races within the city. I mean, I think right now there's 2/3 of the city council that have primaries coming up, and so yes, it is a lot slower, although it won't be as slow as the primary. I think
Uh,
you begin to see how fast things will be
You
moving.
think that, I mean, I've heard that they will have an automated system of some
Correct.
sort. What did you make of the teaming up? And I will tell you, there was something about it that disturbed me, that Jessica Haller and Mina Laura said, hey, if you're not going to pick me, pick her first or me second, that kind of thing. I feel like it's like trying to game the system rather than really appealing to voters. And frankly, when I've talked to advocates of ranked choice voting, they beat me down and said, no, 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 that's not the case. But I still don't have a great feeling about, if you're a candidate, I would think you'd want to say, I'm the one, I'm the best, vote for me. Am I wrong about that?
I think traditionally people want to sort of like make themselves make this sort of like an all man for themselves kind of an operation. But sometimes there's some candidates who have whose interests and sort of commonalities align to the point where they do want to team up and take on a candidate that they both feel does not represent the interests of the people. And so they are well aware that perhaps, Eric Dinowitz was the front runner in the race. And of course, they thought that maybe Dinowitz was in line or had the interest more of the party than say the people. And so they sort of set aside the idea of competition to just try and essentially dethrone them. And so when you are considered the second choice, your fortunes can very well turn around if you end up, sorry about that, if you end up having a little bit more of some a strategy behind wanting to dethrone that first person. And so like it's not sort of like just beholden to that one race. We've been seeing even in the mayor's race, candidates, the top tier candidates anyway, have been kind of coming together to take on like say an issue or take on one candidate. And so it kind of tells you one thing as well, that perhaps it sort of like clears out that we know who the front runner is of that race, and that can actually help the front runner as well, sort of like get more even greater support if it turns out that they are a viable candidate.
What were you surprised that Oswald Felice came out ahead? Now I realize that's a lot closer than um, uh, Eric Dinowitz's apparent victory, but were you surprised that he came out ahead? I mean, I know that Aisha Bravo and John Sanchez both were, very well known and very well liked in their communities, and yet Mr. Felice, came ahead. We'll see how the ranked choice uh, plays out. But I was a little surprised, frankly.
Well, I think I was pretty surprised by that too, just considering John Sanchez had a lot of help from outside PAC money, super PAC money that really just pumped in hundreds of thousands of dollars into that specific race, which I found pretty fascinating, considering special elections don't really get that much attention. But here you had Sanchez getting a really good leg up from a PAC that had been funded primarily by Alice Walton, who is the heir of the Walmart Corporation. I found that pretty fascinating. And, Aisha Bravo, she also had gotten a lot of endorsements, also some support from super PACs, whereas Oswald Felice virtually didn't get anything. And so I did speak to his campaign about that. And he told me that he's been sort of like on the ground for the last few months, and that's what helped establish himself with the residents within the 15th council district. He simply just went by the old traditional route of campaigning on the ground. And obviously with COVID, things are a little bit different, but I guess with him, he sort of just kind of took a chance and started campaigning out in public. And that's what his campaign anyway says, that, gave him a good advantage. It'd be
This
interesting
would
to see how that kind of plays out in the end.
this is really interesting to me, because here they are spending all this money and it didn't turn out. And you're not even talking about a mega race where you need a ton of money. Money certainly helps. What do you make of this idea of super PACs? And now, the real estate billionaire Stephen Ross, you wrote the story about it, gave $500,000 cash to a new super PAC. What do you think about this trend? What are they trying to do? Because the money doesn't go directly to the candidate.
Right.
It goes to their support systems, so to speak. What do you make of this? I'll ask you first, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Well, right now, I think we're in a very this election season is quite frankly one of the more important election seasons in recent memory, simply because we're under this. We're sort of at the tail end of COVID, and right now the big question becomes economic recovery. And so right now the business community in New York City is very scared over just how sort of the direction of where New York City is going. And so they are looking to essentially influence the race by supporting candidates they think are aligned with the business interests of New York City. And so, yes, you do have more super PACs contributing to these races now, because we're sort of like under that kind of like sort of like that atmosphere right now, that vibe that I think, has gotten the business community really scared. And so right now the mayoral candidates that are supported by these super PACs are, folks like William McGuire and Sean Donovan, who are very, pro-business. And, you're right, they don't have to contribute to them directly, but
Yeah, but the point is that this is not for the mayoral race, that they're doing it in local races.
they're doing it for all the races, correct?
Yeah,
because they want a council that does not go ahead and sort of become the enemy of the business community. So they're going at it like block by block.
I spoke to John Sanchez about it, and he was very open, and he said to me, if Walmart thinks that because they did this, all of a sudden I'm going to open up a plot of land for them to rezone for them, as opposed to my advocacy for affordable housing, then they're sadly mistaken, because I'm not going to do that. I think it's interesting that they're picking winners, and interesting that they're picking them in local races. We've never had these mega corporations do that. Kind of changes some of the dynamic in local races, I think.
I think so too. And it does go back to this idea that we know that 2/3 of the council will be, new incoming lawmakers will be coming in. It'll shape sort of the direction of where the council is going to go. And so this is sort of the opportunity for the business community to try and influence it. Doesn't always mean that money will prevail, as we've kind of seen with John Sanchez. Even all this money did not really get him to the top.
Push him over the top.
It's intended to simply help influence the race. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
David Cruz from Gothamist, thank you so much. You want to give us a hint of what you're working on for next? What do you got coming up?
Well, I'm kind of tracing right now the history of Dominican power in New York City elections, and sort of like trying to tie it in with the potential win of Oswald Feliz.
We will look at that piece from Gothamist, and look for you on WNYC and anywhere where the commentary is about the city and is important. And that's our buddy David Cruz from Gothamist. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
That's great. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, the book is The AOC Generation. It's a new book by David Friedlander, and he's going to join us and talk about AOC and the book right after this.